my story despite other people's version. And it's a PowerPoint of my version of how it started, and also my book. Anyway, whoops. Standing but not sitting. It's called My Little Ponytail. And that's supposed to be me with a pony like 40 years ago. Can you believe that? It's amazing. And that's my dream, my little pony.
Knicker.
Knicker.
That's Knicker.
Hey, don't give it away. Don't give it away. Well, a lot of you know the answers to all these questions.
No spoilers.
Right.
We were grilling her earlier.
It's in the book too. You didn't read it yet? Or you didn't buy it?
I literally just got into
I didn't go.
I went and bought it when I finished the
Firm, okay, golly.
Well, I thought you selling something.
So, this is supposed to be me
on her table.
very early in life,
I didn't look at it.
but I've always
first table.
loved horses, as I'm sure a lot of you did too, or still do. Now, when I was just a child, my father was a veterinarian in the Army, so we traveled quite a bit. And one of the places where we lived was Japan. And because my father was in charge of the compound where all the animals were kept for quarantine, he was in charge of it. So there was a Korean pack pony there, and his name was?
Knicker.
Oh, yeah. I forgot, I already gave it away. Anyway, so I used to be able to ride it whenever I wanted to, or whenever my father let me. And I would ride it through the compound, and I thought of Knicker as my little pony. Now, because I loved horses, and as I grew up, I said to my father, well, you know, ponies are great, but I would love a horse. And he said, well, that's okay. You can have a horse when I retire and we move out into the country. So by the time he retired, I was in high school. And we got to the dream house out in the country, and he said, okay, you can have your horse, but you have to get up early every morning. You have to come home right after school. You can't go away on vacations, and you can't go away to college. And I'm like, well, such a deal. I knew no one in the country. We just moved. So I kind of opted for friends rather than a pony. Is that a good choice? I don't know. I don't know. So I did go away to college. I went to Syracuse University in upstate New York. And I was an illustration major and advertising design. And I thought, well, I don't know what you do with this. Maybe children's book illustration? That sounded like a good option. Anyway, my first job was at Rustcraft Greeting Cards in Dedham, Massachusetts. And I was there for quite a while, but I got kind of tired of it because, you know, every Christmas I would be doing Santa Claus and, you know, snowmen. Easter, I'd be doing Easter bunnies for years and years and years, and that gets old. And of course, I didn't think they were paying me enough. So I did freelance work. And doing freelance work, you know, you work for a lot of different companies. And one of my clients was Hasbro. Hasbro Toy Company was about a half an hour from my work. So I would go down there with my job, and they would say, well, if you ever get tired of doing greeting cards, come on down, we'll give you a job. So eventually, Rustcraft was being sold to Ziff Davis Publishing Company. And all the bosses that I worked for said, oh, don't worry, things will be fine. No one will lose their job. But they were all leaving, and I thought, yeah, right. So I thought I better go to Hasbro while I can. So I went down there, And every day was different, but you had to come up with new ideas all the time. I was there for 5 years, coming up with all these great ideas. Some of them made it to market, but not all of them. But I was thinking to myself, what were the most favorite things that I enjoyed as a child? I wasn't really into many toys. I didn't like dolls. And in my day, there were a lot of guns and stuff, but I wasn't into that either. I did ask my parents for an archery set, but but having a brother who I didn't always get along with, my parents thought maybe that wouldn't be such a good idea. No, they're probably right. But my favorite things were, first of all, art supplies, which I always asked for Christmas and my birthday, and I was always get all these art supplies. And I think that's why I became an artist, because I like the supplies, you know? They're wonderful. And I had a record player and all my records. And then, of course, my pets. But the one thing in the world I always wanted was a horse or a pony. I won't be particular. So, here I am at my desk drawing a realistic horse. And do you see what's next to me? Yes. And that I always thought would be my claim to fame, redesigning the iconic Mr. Potato Head. When I was a little girl, believe it or not, Mr. Potato Head was a real potato. Really. You had to buy your own potato. But Hasbro sold the little pieces on a card, and they had spikes in them, so you had to push the things. Some of you are nodding like you had that one too, right?
I know about it.
And the best thing about it was, in my mind, was that, you know, you would leave it under your bed for months. And your mother would say, "What's that smell?" And come out with this. Do you know what a rotten potato smell like?
It's awful. So bad.
It's the worst. So it'd be all green and slimy, but with the, you know, with the pieces still on it, you know, so it was a real monster in the end. Anyway, so, but meanwhile, Mr. Potato Head wasn't my biggest claim to fame, as you might expect. But anyway, I thought, we want them to be realistic horse colors, and I'm sure it'll be a big hit with boys and girls. And I just went backwards. Anyway, so for years, like 3 years in a row, I would get up in front of our internal group and I would say, show my lovely renderings of all my ponies, horses. I didn't say ponies at the time. Little girls love horses. And I presented it, 3 years in a row at least, to no avail, because this is internally, this is like my department, not the people that make the decisions, except they make enough decisions to kill the toy. Which they did. This is a picture of my boss's boss, and my boss's boss's boss. Anyway, my boss's boss said to me, in order to really kill it so I would never think it was my idea again, Bonnie, most girls aren't like you. They like to cook and clean and iron. Ladies? Anyway, I was telling a group this afternoon, I said the same thing at a birthday party where there were parents of young children, and one of the fathers said, "If only." And I loved that line, and I thought, yeah, don't you wish we still love to cook and clean and iron? Some do, but most
And more
don't.
power to you.
Yeah, anyway, so that was his way of telling me I was a weirdo, and we don't want to see this toy again. So, maybe a year later, he starts his own little, what they call, development company, Blue Sky group, and he had one guy who was working for him, one designer. And he said, Bonnie, you know, I have this project for you. I know it's actually your idea, but so-and-so, he should be nameless, thinks that we can do this, and he's gonna change the name, it's gonna be a pony, not a horse. Does anyone know the difference between a horse and a pony? I knew someone would know that.
Professional equestrian.
Yeah, good, good, see, and I was in a presentation not too long ago, and the little boy actually knew the answer, and I'm like, wow. He was also into horses, obviously.
Wait, what is the answer?
The answer is,
It's 14 two hands and under, each hand is measured by 4 inches, so like when you couldn't measure a foot was 12 inches and a hand was 4 inches. So
Yeah.
that's how they would measure the height of the animal.
so a horse is just a bigger pony. But a pony, I think all of us, or a lot of us, when we grew up, thought a pony was a baby horse, but they aren't. And then you get into minis, I don't know what minis are. They're,
Three, technically.
They're very
because you can have a
expensive.
bigger-
yeah.
Little monsters.
Really?
Ponies were meaner.
Oh, really? Yes, some ponies are mean,
No.
but not all of them. Anyway, these are horse people, obviously. So anyway, this friend of mine who was a male designer, said, Bonnie, you know, I don't know how to draw a horse, can you draw it? Because most guys who are in industrial design got into it for one reason. And do we have any men in the audience? What do you think guys like to draw? Cars, that's right, that's why they love it, you know? But they don't know how to draw horses. So I said, okay, I'll draw it up. And this is what happened. This is my boss's idea of what the pony should look like. At least at this time, it was realistic colors, but it was about yay high, hard styrene plastic, which is junky plastic. And it had the comb, the tail and the mane, but it had a winking eye, and for some reason, the ear wiggled, and but I don't think little girls care much about that. But they did sell a couple of million units, I guess. But my boss's boss took it home to his wife. Here she is. Her name is Honey. Her real name was Hannah, but they called her Honey, and it's kind of strange calling a grown woman Honey. Anyway, she said, you know, this is a good toy, except it should be small and soft and played with like a doll. Duh. And I thought, well, I didn't know that she'd done this. But, so my boss's boss, the vice president of marketing, see, it has to get up to a high level before these people really make a decision. And so he came to me and he said, Bonnie, I want you to redraw this. In those days, you had to redraw, you couldn't shrink it down, I don't know why. But anyway, just do exactly the same thing, only make it small and soft and play with like a doll, but don't change a thing about it. This had, My Pretty Pony had all 4 poofs on the ground. And the reason was because it was so big, if you had, like a little pose or even, just off center, it would fall over. And his idea was that little girls would take this to sleep with them. I'm like, oh, you're crazy. But anyway, so I did that, and here I am developing it along the way, and as you can see, it's still realistic colors. And my friend Maureen, who is also in marketing, came in one day and she said, Bonnie, little girls like pink and purple. And I said, I don't care. Get out of my office. And she was a good friend, so I could say that. She said, well, Bonnie, why don't we test it? I said, go ahead, test it. And guess what? Pink and purple won out by a landslide, I'm sure. Oh, and here I am getting angry with her. These are not horse-like colors. Get out of here. Anyway, so pink and purple it was, and 1982 or 3, I'm not sure, probably 83. I went to Toy Fair, and Toy Fair is where all the manufacturers take the toys, and toy buyers come to, buy the lines for their stores. But in those days, and probably, I don't think so now, most of the salesmen were all men, and they had to sell baby dolls and, all sorts of girls' toys that I'm sure they didn't feel comfortable selling. But anyway, they didn't really like My Little Pony. They said, we can't sell this. It doesn't do anything. But what does it do?
Dolls don't do,
It breeds an imagination, and people make up their own stories, and they play with them in a different way. But they didn't get it. But because my boss's boss's boss thinks that his wife came up with the idea, which she did, and it never would have come to market, if she hadn't done that. So, 1983, My Little Pony came to market. And at that point, I had gone to work for Parker Brothers, which was a beautiful spot up in north of Boston, the North Shore. And it was a great place. It was like a country club. And they paid me very well, better than Hasbro. But they paid me to do what, do you think, all day long?
cards, greeting cards.
No, not great cards. That's going backwards. They paid me really well to play games all day long. And I tell that to kids and they think, wow, I could do that. I wish I could still do that because I still play a lot of games. Anyway, so my friend Maureen calls me one day when I'm working at Parker Brothers, and she said, Bonnie, Pony's doing really well. And I said, well, it's around Easter time. And I thought, well, it's a nice thing to put in an Easter basket. I'm not surprised. And a couple months later, she calls me and she said, Bonnie, Pony is galloping off the shelves. And I'm like, well, what do you know? We hit it, and the rest is history. Something happened, I touched something. Oh, okay, sorry. I'm not very technical. There she is. And this last one is of my niece Emily, who did get a pony, a real pony, and real horses, and she jumped them and showed them and did dressage and all sorts of things. And she still loved horses. But guess what? She had to get up early every morning. She had to come home every night. She couldn't go away to school. She couldn't go away on vacation, but she still loves horses. That's the end of my book, but now this is the actual catalog version of My Pretty Pony. I call it My Pretty Big Pony, and it was. But you can see the ear and the eye winking. And they actually gave her a cowgirl hat, which I didn't remember, but I think that was nice. And as you can see, it doesn't have any spots on its rear. That came later, and somebody thought it was a good idea to paint the hoofs, the front of them white. That wasn't my idea, but it was a pretty good toy. And these are the original 6. Does anyone know their names? Can you read that? First there's Snuzzle, Butterscotch, Bluebell, Minty, Blossom, and Cotton Candy. And I named them all, and I named them for the colors that I knew they were going to be molded in. And I'm really sad that they didn't use any of my original names, but I think there's some pretty good names.
What were the names?
What were the original names?
Yeah, what were the names?
Pardon?
What were the original names?
Snuzzle,
Oh.
Butterscotch, Bluebell, Misty, Blossom, and Cotton Candy.
They still have those names.
Well, the 40th anniversary ones, yes. But, you know, Pinkie Pie, I didn't think of that. I don't know who did. Who thought of Pinkie Pie? Anyone know? No? Somebody?
No, we're talking about a different generation.
Yeah, right. But anyway, I think, I love some of the new names, and I don't by any means know all of them. So, do we have any questions? Yes?
You really liked natural horse colors, and I know by at least the 90s there were some other toy companies producing like Grand Champions and Breyer horses. Did you ever have any opinion on those?
Breyer actually came before My Little Pony, so, and I thought that was a nice idea. But, you know, again, they were hard, you know, stiff, had no mane or tail, which I think is, you know, a big thing. It's a big thing in dolls, and, you know, obviously in ponies. You know, you could braid it, you could do so much with it. And I'm sure there've been since other, you know, copycats or other people that do it. When I was little, all we had was, you know, like little porcelain horses, and it's hard to play with those, you know. I mean, they were so fragile, and they really weren't very tactile at all. Anybody else? Yes.
When you were working at Hasbro and you were working up what the first six would look like,
Right.
what role did you play in like how they were modeled, and then, because I've seen some of the prototypes that were just painted and everything with the colors and all. Well, what did that look like for you? What are your recollections of that stage of making a prototype?
Actually, we didn't really have a lot to do with the making of the prototype. That was done in the model shop and elsewhere. But what you do, the process is, as an industrial designer, which I'm really not, I'm an illustrator. So I would make renderings of these, and usually my renderings were of the very best side of, you know, the different characters, and Pony included. And it was like a 3/4 view, you know? And I always used to get into trouble because a lot of times they would want what they call a detail drawing, which means you have to do the front, the back, the bottom, the top, the side. It's just like, that's not the way I think, you know? I think, you know, what's the best looking portion of it? So the idea is you have to get a sculptor who can kind of figure out what it would look like. And I did have some really good sculptors that I work with, and they did a really nice job of it. But you would go and you would say, yeah, this looks like what it should look like from this side, and, you know, and maybe make the eye bigger or smaller or do this, but, you know, for the most part, they did a good job. The first sculptor who worked on My Little Pony, his name was Charlie Munziger, and he's on the original patent application, because he really did do the original sculpture. And Charlie was a good sculptor, but he always thought he knew better than you did. You know, I would draw it and I said, here it is. And he would give it back to me, only it would be more realistic than what I originally thought of. And, you know, I kind of used it a little turned up, kind of cartoony, but, you know, semi-realistic. And the first pony was more realistic than I dreamt of. It's kind of got a, you know, a straight snout and not a turned up nose like an Arabian. You know, that's a pretty horse, you know?
Yeah.
And there's some horses that are not all that attractive. But it's true. I can't remember there's one that is a real good horse, but it just doesn't look great, you know?
Like a Belgian.
A Belgian or it had a, I think it was an Italian name, but I don't know. I can't remember. I'm not that familiar with horses. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I mean, there's other horse people here. If I say the breed I think's ugly, I'm gonna offend some.
It's okay, these are pony people. Anyway, really. But I, you know, when I saw it, and you know, there's always pressure on getting it out on time, you know, and all that stuff. And I thought, no, you know, it does look like a pony. And it had a sweet face. And I think it captured the idea of what I wanted to get across. And my thing is, I always usually start with the eyes, because I think if you get the eyes right, you know, that's the whole personality of the character. And he got the eyes right. And I think, you know, to have that sweet, kind look. Somebody said today that it, you know, when they were sick, they'd line up their ponies, and it just gave them strength and confidence to see the kindness in their faces. And, you know, that's what I was going for. So he got that right. Anyway. Yes.
Even though you prefer the like real colors of the pony, is there one now that you see and you're like more partial to?
Well, people always ask me what's my favorite one, and I say the pink one. that could be almost anything, but I do love the name Pinkie Pie. I just love it.
It's so much fun.
It is fun. It's just, you know, it embodies, you know, the joy of My Little Pony, I think. Question back there?
What did you think of the 80s cartoon show?
The 80s cartoon show, I was not really a fan of, because they had all sorts of monsters in there and stuff, and I'm like, really? This isn't what I envisioned at all. But, you know, and I absolutely hated My Little Pony. And people would sing that to me, and you know. Anyway, but it, and that was put together by Hasbro's advertising firm, which was again all men. And they, you know, they had them throw in monsters and whatever they did. I'm not sure I ever saw the whole thing in one episode. But you know, I saw a TV show at Toy Fair. I guess it was when it first came out, and my friend Liz Knight, who took over my job at Hasbro, later became VP of Girls Toys at Hasbro, showed me Lauren Faust's drawings, and I'm like, whoa, you know, these don't look at all like mine. And I didn't really get it until I saw the show, and I thought, this is really good. This is way better than the 80s cartoon show. And, you know, I really, you know, if I'd been a better animator, or, you know, maybe stayed in school longer, I would have come up with that, because I do like that cartoony, you know, fun look. I think she did a great job. And I'm glad it's still on. But, anywho, yes.
Hi, Bonnie.
Hi, Karen. Yes.
So My Little Pony headed for the Toy Hall of Fame. We know it's headed there eventually. And you'll
Yeah,
be
did
there.
they vote on that yet?
Yep, well, no, but
No, they didn't.
we all know it's going there. You'll be there someday.
Yeah.
You do feel you belong there, right?
Well, not me, but Pony.
You
For
do,
sure.
okay, good.
For sure.
I'm glad, because we're all in agreement, right?
Well,
Yeah.
of course.
All the time.
But aren't they the same ones who voted the stick and sand as?
Oh my God.
Yeah. And I'm like, yeah, kids play with sticks and sand and balls and stuff, but it's not a toy. I mean, they make it into a toy using imagination, which is the same thing kids use with My Little Pony, you know? Anyway, good question. Yes, one of you.
Was this the only 6 you made, or you were able to make more after this 6?
I only did the very first 6. And when, the first time they invited me to join in the My Little Pony convention was my friend Liz invited me, and she was at Hasbro at the time. And she invited me to come, and I was on the panel, and people would get up and, you know, like people from the UK, why didn't they make this in blue in the UK instead of that? And I'm like, what? I had no idea. I mean, Pony went on, I mean, the first 6, how many thousands of them that came after me? How many designers after me? So many. I mean, it's not just one person. You know, it's like, I got the ball rolling, I guess. But there were so many different people involved, you know? Anyway, I only did the first 6. And I tried to sell them, you know, pony related things, but they wouldn't buy it. If they have to pay for it, they don't want to buy it. They got me for free. Does anyone know how much money I got in royalties? No, they didn't. They had to pay me $1 in order for me to sign away the patent.
Oh, no.
Because that makes it legal. And other considerations, which were my salary for 5 years. But, you know, anyway, so, and kids, you know, I did a presentation not long ago at my old school that I used to teach in, and I asked the same question. The 5th grader said, $500 billion million. I'm like, yeah, you know, just way beyond anything. And the kindergartner said, $25? I said, you're close. Really? And they were still surprised it was only $1. But that's the way of the world. Yes.
When you originally conceived the idea of a pony toy, did you have the idea of any accessories or playsets that would go with it?
Well, the most obvious one was the comb. I mean, really, you need the comb. And, you know, as it developed, you know, there were more fun things that we did with it. And, I mean, it's like, is it a person? Is it a horse? Do kids, do dolls ride it? And I kind of thought, yeah, maybe they did. And there was a time where they came up with a few figures that rode it. But, you know, obviously, you know, Pony wasn't really to be ridden. It was, you know, a character unto itself, really. So, did I answer the question? Good. Yes.
Kind of related to the accessories, I noticed on your slide of your favorite things, you had a little cat. And I wondered if you also designed the little cat that came with the My Little Pony Pretty Parlor, Cat Never Twinkles.
I think I did.
Your art style even looks.
Yeah, I know. And some things come out pretty much like you drew them. I'm not sure. I think I probably did. I'm not sure. And I was the summer has a new book about glow friends, and I was thinking to myself, I think I designed that, but I can't remember. I really can't. And the reason I can't was because I think they put it aside. They were giving it to Sears or Toys R Us as a special. That was one of the tricks they used to do. Anything that, you know, we killed in-house, they'd give to someone as a special. And it came out later that they produced Glow Worm and Glow Friends after that. Yeah, so it's possible. I don't know. I don't take credit for the ones I don't like. And there were plenty of them I don't like. But anyway, not Pony. Hi.
Can you tell us a little bit more about the to add symbols on the ponies? Cause like the first, my pretty pony didn't have one.
Right.
And then the little ones did.
Right. Well, you know, it all comes down to money, and it costs money to decorate these things, especially in those days. It was like every shot or every thing they paint, it cost them more money. But I think there must have been some extra money somewhere, but it was a pad print. It was very cheap. So the first ones I did were on cotton candy. They're just spots, like an Appaloosa, because I thought it added more, you know, variety and detail. So then I had these other colors, and I thought, well, you know, you might as well make the spots go with the theme or the color of the pony. So that's when I added that, just for interest and for fun. And I didn't call them cutie spots. I can't remember what we call them. Rump designs. Something not very romantic for sure. Anyway. Yes.
What was your favorite medium to work in?
Well, in those days, I used Sharpie markers and magic markers. And, you know, I thought it was nice. It gave a nice, and then you could kind of, you know, gradation, grade them and make them look pretty nice. But, you know, when I was teaching, I'd say, okay, get out your magic markers. And the kids would say, what's magic about them? Well, that's what we called them. That was the brand name. Remember that? But I'm sorry, they're not magic anymore. And they don't design that way now. I've gone back and have friends that were still there. And everything is on the computer. They even draw on the computer. They have tablets, you know? It's like, it's a brave new world. And with, what is it, IA? AI, yeah, dyslexic too. You know, they say, well, illustration will be dead because people can just click on things and add this and add that, and, you know? Just like the actors, we may be out of work, those of us who are illustrators. Do you find that? I know, it's sad but true. But, you know, there are good things that came with the computer too, like lettering and designing typefaces and stuff. We did everything by hand. And in advertising, you had to cut out little pieces of type and paste them on, you know. Some things are better, but not everything. Anybody else guess?
How is it determined that pastel colors were a preference over the real course colors? Like, were prototypes given to a group of kids to play with?
Yes, yes. And in those days, Hasbro, believe it or not, well, it was in the 70s and I guess almost 80s. They didn't test anything except to see if the kids could actually play with it. And sometimes they didn't test them until after they'd already made them. And like Mr. Potato Head, I think there was a problem because kids, the stems weren't long enough. Kids couldn't get them in the holes. And if you can't see them, you can't put them in. So the fact that they wanted to test them means that marketing really wanted to do it their way, which, you know, they did. And, you know, kids, you know, girls especially, pick pink and purple, what can I say? Yes. Hi.
What were some of your other ideas while you were at Hasbro?
Oh, gee. There was one, we did a lot of bathtub toys. You don't see a lot of bathtub toys anymore. It was a sea serpent. It was called Macbeth, the Silly Sweet Serpent. And you know, you could squirt it, and it had little things on it. And I think it did float. You know, the idea was, I was telling someone earlier today, they used to have the adage, if it's meant to float, it will sink, and if it's meant to sink, it'll float, because you can't predict that kind of thing. So there was that, maybe glowworm. this was like 40 years ago, I can't remember everything. My first line of toys were musical instruments that were in the shape of animals. And I just saw one the other day, I don't know, somebody on TV had them, and I thought, that's my toy. But it wasn't. It was bird binoculars that looked like owls. There was a little owl, and you look through it with big eyes, but hers didn't have a beak or feet or anything. And a hippo that you open the mouth, and it was a xylophone. You took out the ears, it was a xylophone. A toucan that was a slide whistle. But I thought they were really cute. But I think I went away for one weekend, or maybe I took a vacation for a week, and I came back and they were all changed. And so I learned never to take a whole week. Only take off, short time so they can't ruin your ideas. But
I get it.
yes, sir.
What did you think about the idea of people starting to collect the action figures?
I didn't know what was going on. I really didn't. I mean, really? And, and I never realized there were that many, really. I know Hasbro came out with them year after year, and I don't know how many different ones they've come out with every year. Maybe only 6, but I can't imagine you would end up with thousands of versions with only 6 every year. 6 times 40 is 100 and something. Not too tired to do that. Anyway.
Way more.
No, it was a real surprise to me. And I think, a lot of toys during the 80s, which I think was the golden age of toys, engendered a lot of collecting. Star Wars, G.I. Joe, Transformers, and all that stuff happened in that one decade.
That's true.
People are still collecting them, obviously.
It's true.
For which we're all grateful, aren't we?
Mm-hmm.
And it's fun. Even if you're not a child anymore, we're all kids at heart.
Yep.
Yes, sir.
Do you have a personal collection of anything like from the 80s or whatever?
I mostly collect things that I did. So I have the original 6, and I have the retro 40th anniversary of the original 6.
Oh, nice.
What can I say? I don't have a pony room, but I have a room full of, toys that didn't make it or toys that did make it. I have a few versions of Mr. Potato Head, and the one thing about Mr. Potato Head that I really loved was they did a lot of fun things with it, like they did Darth Vader. Remember that? Wasn't that genius? And the year the Red Sox won the series, there was one that was dressed up like, I can't remember the player's name, but they did a lot of really neat things. Anyway. Well.
Weird question. What's your favorite board game? You said you still like board games.
It's true.
Favorite
Clue.
top
I
Clue?
love Clue.
Okay.
Yeah.
Love to, yeah.
It really, and I'm pretty good at it. I'll tell you, when I worked at Parker Brothers, well, first of all, when I worked at Hasbro, we passed on Cabbage Patch Kids.
Oh, that was hard.
And my friend Maureen, she was the one who passed on it. She didn't think they were very cute. And I thought it was a neat idea, and I did think they were fun. But she was right. Hasbro wouldn't have done it correctly. I don't think they wouldn't have spent the money to do, change all that stuff. That was too much. And then when I worked at Parker Brothers, they were playing a game when I first got there called Trivial Pursuit. They also passed on that. Then when I was there after a while, we got a game in that was called Pictionary. And all the designers loved it. It was so much fun. And they passed on that. And their reasoning was, well, of course you like it, you're designers, you love to draw. Do you know that designers and illustrators are the worst at Pictionary? They're always going, well, you know, you gotta do this and that. And people will win at it, there's stick figures like in 3 seconds, and we're still noodling with it. So, it all depends on your perspective. But it was fun to play games, whether they did them or not. Yes, sir.
So, over all these years until now, how do you feel how it has grown to this generation of your creation? How do you feel yourself? How if you feel it was successful for you, that your creation turned to be until you are right now?
Well, you know, it's very gratifying because, you know, I want to say, see, I told you. To all those naysayers, you know, to have the last word. I mean, you are proof of that. Thank you all very much.